Hi guys, it's Grace. So last week I went to a book talk given by Dr. Jessica K. Taft. She is a professor at UC Santa Cruz. She wrote a book called Rebel Girls: Youth Activism and Social Change Across the Americas. Dr. Taft met with many activist women, or girls as they often identify themselves, of the ages from between 14 and 18. What she found is that these girls couldn't reconcile their identity as both a girl and an activist, and they could only see themselves as one or the other at a certain time. Maybe while they were with their friends, hanging out, just talking about boys or clothes or girls or whatever they were talking about, they thought of themselves as girls or teenage girls or whatever qualifier they had, but that when they were doing activist work, they thought of themselves as activists or more womanly or more powerful. What she said about this is that we should teach our girls not just empowerment like we do in places such as the Girl Scouts, which for me, I think it's great. I'm still a Girl Scout. I got my gold award, and I think that if I hadn't had that empowerment from the Girl Scouts, I probably wouldn't have been able to be as confident in myself to know that what I think and what my goals are with the activism that I do are valid. So I think empowerment is a step, but like Professor Taft, she said that empowerment isn't enough. Empowerment is like halfway there. Activism is the next step. In talking to the girls that she spoke with for her book, Professor Taft learned that there was like a myriad of issues. There was so many different, everything was diverse. Not a single girl from a single place was focused on the same issue. And that means that there are so many issues that are important to girls. There's not just like, girls aren't just focused on the feminist issues. Girls aren't just focused on issues that have to do with a girl that's between the ages of 14 and 18. They're focused on everything. They're focused on racial equity, they're focused on education in schools, making their schools better, they're focused on community development, such as gentrification and what that means. They're focused on violence, a lot of state-based and also interpersonal violence. That's violence against women, violence against children, violence against whoever. They're focused on changing that. And that's a whole spectrum of issues, which are really important to note that girls are involved in that those issues affect girls. So something that I started thinking about a lot when Professor Taft was listing all of these diverse issues was how, as girls and as young women, how can we make these issues that are important to us and important to the whole world, how can we stop men from seeing them as gendered issues? How can we show them that just because we're women, just because we're more feminine, how can we show them that these issues are universal? In the Q&A after Professor Taft was finished talking, I asked that question. I asked her, how would she propose that we do that? How do we show that all the issues are important to everyone and that they can be useful? And what she said is that education is the number one thing that we can do in activism, but it's not the only thing. And it shouldn't be the only thing, which I had never thought of because I've always used education. I've always been very grassroots, a grassroots activist, always just word of mouth or online sharing information and educating each other, having well-educated conversations, and that has worked for me and I've gotten good at it through practice. So it was interesting for me to hear her say that maybe activism doesn't need to convince other people, maybe to promote change or maybe to make change, we don't need to have everybody on board with us. And I think that's definitely true. I think we've seen that in things like the gay rights movement. Recently, all the change and activism that's happened have been through the court systems, and that means that we've overstepped on the people who disagree with us. We haven't had to convince everyone. Not everyone agrees that gay marriage should be legal, but it is in many more states this year because of the court system. And I realize that not everything can be passed through the courts, not everything will happen that way, which makes me question how then besides education, do we go about making change? And that's kind of just been something that's been on my mind for the past week. She also mentioned making change through legislation. I can see the value of that, but I also don't see it happening in things like feminism, because the majority of our legislative powers within Congress are white, heterosexual males. And through what we've seen in the past year, at least, those people aren't our advocates. Those people are not listening to us. And some people might think, yeah, well, now we have 100 women in Congress. So what? There are 500 some odd positions in Congress. 100 is not enough. And I mean, great, we have 100 women. Like, that's beautiful. I'm so happy about it. But also, not enough. We need so much more, and I'm kind of stumped as to what else we can do. So I'm going to pose a question to you. How can we, as young activists or old activists, or whoever is watching this, whoever wants to respond, how can we, as a culture of activists, how can we affect change beyond simply educating and convincing everyone to agree with us? Let's have a conversation. Leave a comment below. I would love to get in dialogue with a lot of people, because I still think that conversation and problem solving goes beyond the individual. I can sit here and say on YouTube, listen to what I have to say. I can put my thoughts out there, and I can hope that maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. My biggest hope, though, is that we can start a conversation, we can come to a solution bigger and better than what I can think of on my own. So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed.